My parents publicly shamed me online to protect my insane soccer coach, so I finally cut them off. A month later, they received an email that ruined everything they believed. When my teammates stood up for me against our abusive coach, my parents told me to thank him for caring enough to push me. I've played soccer since I was 5. Not because I loved it, but because in my family, you have to. My mom was all-state MVP. My dad played semi-pro in college. Even my little brother made varsity freshman year. Our whole house is basically a shrine to soccer trophies and laminated newspaper clippings. So of course, when I joined my high school team, they acted like it was my destiny. But here's the truth. I'm not very good. I've always been benched more than I played. I try, I really do, but something about my coordination just never clicked. Still, I kept going. Because while I hated how bad I felt on the field, I loved my teammates. They made me feel like I belonged, even if the scoreboard didn't. The only person who made everything feel 10 times worse? Coach Ryder. Now let me be clear. All coaches yell. That's normal. But this wasn't yelling. It was something else. Something off. The way he singled out girls during practice. The way his eyes would linger when we were stretching. How he'd invite us to stay after for personal drills while smiling way too hard. None of us ever stayed, thank God. But still, he never stopped asking. At first, I thought maybe I was just being sensitive. So I didn't tell anyone, especially my parents. Because in my family, quitting is worse than failing. And Coach Ryder? He was considered a legend. My dad literally told me once that if I listened to Coach Ryder and worked hard, he'd turn me into someone our family could be proud of. So yeah, telling them he made my skin crawl? Not an option. The worse I played, the harder he pushed. He'd single me out during scrimmages, call me slow, dead weight, even a waste of jersey fabric. I told myself to toughen up. I pretended it didn't bother me. But it did. It really did. And then it got worse. A few weeks ago, I missed a goal during practice. And he snapped. Jesus, Lindsay, you're a effing embarrassment. You should be grateful I even let you on this team. Maybe if you stayed after practice and worked on those lazy-ass thighs, you wouldn't suck so bad. Everyone heard it. But nobody even moved. I opened my mouth to speak, but my teammate Sam beat me to it. She turned to him, completely calm, and said, "You ever talk to her like that again? I'll rip your whistle off and shove it so far down your throat, we'll finally get some peace." Dead. Silence. Coach turned bright red. "Excuse me?" "No," Sam said. "You're not excused. You're not a coach. You're a creep with a clipboard." I couldn't breathe. I was staring at the ground trying to disappear when Coach yelled, "You're off the team, both of you. Get off my field." That's when something insane happened. The rest of the girls? They dropped their water bottles and walked toward me. One by one. Standing in front of Sam and me like a wall. No one said a word. But I could feel it. I wasn't alone anymore. Even our goalie, quietest girl on the team, just looked at Coach and said, "Maybe we should talk to the school counselor about your private lesson obsession." Coach tried to backtrack, of course. Suddenly we were overreacting. But it was too late. We'd seen him for who he really was. Later that night, I told my parents what happened. I hoped, they'd finally listen. But they didn't. "Are you sure you're not just being emotional?" my mom asked. My dad crossed his arms and muttered, "This is why people don't get better. One bit of tough love and they call it abuse." "I'm not calling it abuse," I said. "Sweetie," my mom cut me off. "We've known Coach Ryder for years. He's a professional. You just need to grow thicker skin." That's when I realized it didn't matter what I said. It didn't matter how scared I felt, or how much he humiliated me. To them, he was a soccer god. And I was just the bench warmer who couldn't take a joke. The next morning, my dad told me I needed to apologize to Coach. "Think of the college scouts," he said. "You don't want to ruin your chances over some misunderstanding." I didn't say anything. I just went upstairs, sat on the floor of my room, and cried. I cried for the girl who tried so hard to be enough, who thought maybe, just maybe, if she worked hard enough, her parents might finally be proud. But that girl is gone now. Because today, after school, something changed. We had a team meeting. Without Coach. The principal had received multiple complaints. Apparently other girls had been collecting screenshots and messages for weeks. And now, there's an investigation. Coach Ryder's been suspended. When I got home, my dad was waiting in the kitchen, arms crossed. "You talked to the principal yet?" he asked. I nodded. "So? You gonna fix this mess or what?" I looked him dead in the eye. And for once, I didn't flinch. "No," I said. "I'm not fixing it. Because it was never my mess." My mom gasped. "Lindsay, don't be dramatic." But I didn't wait for her to finish. I turned around, walked upstairs, and started packing a bag. I don't know where I'm going yet. All I know is, I'm done being the one who bends. If they want their perfect soccer daughter, they can go find her somewhere else. Last I heard, my parents took Coach Ryder in and are demanding I come back home. Little did I know the surprise they had waiting for me. I didn't have a plan. I just knew I couldn't stay there anymore. I texted Sam, "Can I crash at your place tonight?" She replied immediately. "Already told my mom. She's making up the guest room." I waited until my parents were arguing in the living room before sneaking out the back door. I made it to Sam's house just as it started raining. Her mom opened the door before I could even knock. "Come in, sweetheart," she said, pulling me into a hug. Sam told me everything. "You're welcome to stay as long as you need." That night, I slept better than I had in years. No pressure, no disappointment, just peace. But it didn't last. The next morning, my phone exploded with texts from my parents. They were furious. My dad threatened to call the police if I didn't come home. My mom said I was tearing the family apart. Then came the worst text of all, from my brother Jake. Mom and Dad are planning to meet with Coach Ryder tomorrow. They want to hear his side and figure out how to get you to recant. Be careful. I stared at my phone in disbelief. My parents were planning to meet with Coach Ryder? After everything I'd told them? That's when I realized this wasn't just about soccer anymore. This was about control. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to give it to them. I felt sick reading Jake's text. What were they thinking? I showed Sam the message and she immediately went into protective mode. You're not going back there, she said, grabbing my phone. Not while they're taking his side over yours. Sam's mom, Mrs. Chen, overheard us and asked what was happening. When we explained, her face hardened in a way that reminded me of Sam during the confrontation with Coach. Lindsay, you're staying here tonight, she said firmly. I'll call your parents and let them know you're safe. I nodded, relieved but still anxious. Mrs. Chen took my phone and went into the kitchen to make the call. I couldn't hear exactly what was said, but I caught phrases like completely inappropriate and putting her at risk. When she returned, she looked troubled. Your parents insist you need to come home to sort things out as a family, she said, making air quotes. I told them you're welcome here until things cool down. That night, I barely slept. I kept checking my phone, which was blowing up with texts from my parents. My dad's messages started with guilt trips. You're breaking your mother's heart, and escalated to threats. You'll regret this decision for the rest of your life. My mom took a different approach, claiming I was confused and misinterpreting everything. I turned my phone off around midnight, but that didn't help much. I kept imagining my parents sitting with Coach Ryder, nodding along as he spun some story about how I was too sensitive or making things up for attention. The next morning was Monday, which meant facing school. Sam lent me some clothes and her mom drove us. As we pulled up to the entrance, I spotted a group of my teammates huddled near the steps. They waved us over as soon as they saw us. You okay? Mia asked quietly. We've been texting you. Sorry, I turned my phone off, I explained. It's been a lot. We heard Coach Ryder's telling people you made everything up, said Jess, another teammate. He's saying you're trying to get him fired because he benched you. My stomach dropped. What? That's not true. We know, Mia assured me. Nobody believes him. Well, except... She trailed off, looking uncomfortable. I followed her gaze across the parking lot where my brother Jake was getting out of my dad's car. He glanced our way, then quickly looked down and hurried inside. Jake told some guys on the boys' team that you're going through a phase, Jess explained. Said you've always been dramatic. I felt like I'd been punched. My own brother was taking their side. Before I could process this betrayal, the first bell rang, and we had to head inside. The school day was a nightmare. People whispered as I walked by. Some girls from other sports teams gave me dirty looks. Apparently, Coach Ryder was popular with more than just my parents. During lunch, I hid in the library again, not wanting to face the cafeteria crowd. I was flipping mindlessly through a book when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I believe you about Coach Ryder. He did the same thing to me 2 years ago at Westlake High. No one believed me either. Stay strong. I stared at the message, my hands shaking. Coach Ryder had done this before? At another school? I quickly texted back, asking for more information, but got no response. After school, I had a meeting scheduled with Principal Warner to give a formal statement about Coach Ryder. Sam waited outside the office for moral support. Inside, Principal Warner looked tired but determined. Lindsay, I want you to know we're taking this very seriously, she said. Several other students have come forward with similar complaints. I nodded, relieved I wasn't alone in this. However, she continued, her expression growing concerned, I received a call from your parents this morning. They expressed concerns about your mental state. My mental state? I repeated, confused. They suggested you might be exaggerating the situation for attention, she said carefully. They mentioned you've been struggling with the pressure of living up to your family's athletic legacy. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My parents were trying to discredit me to the principal? I felt my face burning with humiliation and anger. That's not true, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I'm not making anything up. Ask any girl on the team. Principal Warner nodded. I have, and their accounts match yours. That's why I wanted to speak with you directly. Your parents also mentioned you ran away from home? I'm staying with a friend, I clarified. It didn't feel safe at home after they decided to side with Coach Ryder. Her eyebrows shot up at this. They're taking his side after multiple reports? I nodded, and she made a note on her pad. The rest of the meeting was straightforward. I gave my statement, she recorded it, and I signed some forms. When I left, Sam was still waiting, scrolling through her phone with a worried expression. You need to see this, she said, handing me her phone. It was a Facebook post from my mom. Heartbroken that our daughter has chosen to make false accusations against a respected coach rather than accept constructive criticism. Mental health issues in teens are so misunderstood. Please pray for our family during this difficult time. Parenting is hard. The post had dozens of sympathetic comments from family, friends, and relatives. My aunt had written, she's always been a sensitive child. Sending love. My dad's golf buddy added, kids these days can't handle tough love. Stay strong. I felt like I was going to throw up. My parents were publicly painting me as mentally unstable rather than believing me. I handed the phone back to Sam, my hands shaking. My parents are monsters, I whispered. They're in denial, Sam said, trying to be fair. They can't accept that they trusted someone who turned out to be a creep. That night at Sam's house, I received 3 more anonymous texts from different numbers, all with similar stories about Coach Ryder. One was from a girl at his previous school. Another was from someone whose sister had him as a coach at a summer camp. The third was from a girl on our school's volleyball team, saying he'd made inappropriate comments when substituting for their coach last year. I showed the messages to Sam and her mom. Mrs. Chen suggested I forward them to Principal Warner, which I did immediately. This is bigger than just our team, I realized. He's been doing this for years. The next day, Tuesday, things escalated. My parents apparently decided that if public shaming wouldn't bring me home, legal threats might work. I was called to the office during second period to find my dad waiting with Principal Warner and a woman in a suit who introduced herself as the school district's attorney. Your father has expressed concerns about your living situation, Principal Warner explained carefully. My dad jumped in before I could respond. You're coming home today, Lindsay. This little rebellion has gone far enough. Mr. Thompson, the attorney interjected. As I was explaining before your daughter arrived, at 17, Lindsay is not considered a runaway under state law as long as her whereabouts are known and she's in a safe environment. My dad's face turned red. She's my daughter. You can't keep her from her family. Dad, I'm staying at Sam's, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Her parents know I'm there. I'm going to school. I'm safe. This is ridiculous, he snapped. You're throwing away your future over some hurt feelings. Coach Ryder was trying to help you improve. Mr. Thompson, Principal Warner cut in. I should inform you that we've received multiple reports about Coach Ryder's behavior, not just from Lindsay. My dad scoffed. Teenage girls sticking together. They probably coordinated their stories. The attorney cleared her throat. Actually, we've received reports spanning several years and multiple schools. That shut him up, at least temporarily. The meeting ended with no resolution. I refused to go home, and legally, they couldn't make me. As I left the office, my dad grabbed my arm. Your mother is heartbroken, he hissed. Is that what you wanted? To destroy our family? I pulled away. You destroyed it when you chose Coach Ryder over me. The rest of the week passed in a blur of anxiety and small victories. On Wednesday, I learned that the school board had scheduled a special meeting for the following Monday to address the Coach Ryder situation. Students, parents, and staff were invited to speak. On Thursday, my brother Jake approached me in the hallway between classes. He looked uncomfortable, shifting from foot to foot as he blocked my path. Mom and Dad want you to come home, he said. They said they're willing to forget this whole thing if you just admit you overreacted. Overreacted? I repeated. Jake, you were at practices. You saw how he treated me. He shrugged. Coaches yell, Lindsay. It's part of sports. It wasn't just yelling, I insisted. And what about the creepy comments? The way he stared at us? Jake looked away. Dad says you're imagining things because you can't handle criticism. And you believe that? I asked, hurt flooding through me. I don't know what to believe anymore, he muttered. But I know our family is falling apart, and it started when you ran away. I shook my head. It started when our parents decided their soccer dreams were more important than their daughter's safety. He didn't have an answer for that. As he walked away, I noticed a small crowd had gathered, watching our exchange. Great. More gossip for the rumor mill. By Friday, the situation had somehow gotten even worse. Someone, and I had a pretty good idea who, had leaked parts of my confidential statement to the school board. Selective parts that, taken out of context, made it sound like I was just complaining about tough coaching rather than reporting inappropriate behavior. Screenshots circulated through student group chats. Some people were supportive, but others called me a snowflake, and worse. The girls' soccer team closed ranks around me, forming a protective bubble in the hallways and at lunch. That afternoon, I received a text from my mom that chilled me to the bone. We're willing to work this out as a family. Come home for dinner Sunday night. Just you, me, and Dad. We miss you. Something about the message felt off. Too conciliatory after days of public attacks and legal threats. I showed it to Sam. It's a trap, she said immediately. They're going to try to force you to recant before the school board meeting on Monday. I thought she might be overreacting until I got a text from Jake an hour later. Don't come home Sunday. Coach Ryder might stop by while you're there. They think they can mediate between you two. My blood ran cold. They were still taking his side, even after everything. I forwarded Jake's warning to Principal Warner, who responded almost immediately. This is extremely inappropriate. I'll be contacting your parents. That night, I got another anonymous text. I heard you're speaking at the board meeting. Be careful. Coach Ryder has friends on the board. They buried my complaint last year. The weekend was tense. I stayed at Sam's, jumping every time my phone buzzed. My parents alternated between pleading messages, we just want to talk, and thinly veiled threats. You're making choices you'll regret for the rest of your life. On Saturday night, Mrs. Chen sat me down at their kitchen table with a serious expression. Lindsay, I need to tell you something, she said. Your father called today. He threatened to file a police report accusing us of harboring a runaway if you don't come home tomorrow. My stomach dropped. Can he do that? She shook her head. Not successfully. You're 17, you've told multiple school officials where you are, and we've made it clear you're welcome here. But, she hesitated. But what? He also implied he might contact Sam's college recruiter with concerns about her character. I felt sick. My parents were now threatening Sam's future because she helped me? I can leave, I said immediately. I don't want to cause problems for you guys. Absolutely not, Mrs. Chen said firmly. That's exactly what they want, to isolate you. Sam's recruitment is solid and your father's threats are empty, but you should know what you're dealing with. Sunday morning, I woke up to find I Stand with Coach Ryder trending in our local social media circles. Someone had organized a campaign to support him ahead of the board meeting. Photos showed people in our community wearing team jerseys and holding supportive signs. I recognized several of my parents' friends in the images. Then I saw it. A photo of my parents standing in front of our house with Coach Ryder between them, all smiling broadly. My mom had her arm around his shoulder like they were old friends. The caption read, "Supporting a coach who pushes our kids to excellence." The Thompson family knows real coaching isn't always comfortable. Tough love is real love. I threw my phone across the room and burst into tears. They were using our family name, my name, to support him publicly. It was the ultimate betrayal. Sam found me curled up on the guest bed, sobbing. She didn't say anything, just sat beside me and rubbed my back until I calmed down. "I can't go to the board meeting tomorrow," I finally said. "Everyone will be against me." "Not everyone," Sam replied. "Check your email." I retrieved my phone and opened my email to find dozens of messages from teammates, other students, even a few parents. They'd all seen the social media campaign and wanted me to know they supported me. Several promised to speak at the meeting. Most surprisingly, there was an email from my brother Jake. "I'm sorry. I didn't know how bad it was. Mom and Dad have lost it. I'll be at the meeting tomorrow." Sunday night, I barely slept. I kept rehearsing what I would say at the meeting, imagining all the ways it could go wrong. What if no one believed me? What if Coach Ryder's supporters shouted me down? What if my parents made a scene? Monday morning arrived with a sense of dread. The board meeting was scheduled for 4 p.m. after school. I went through my classes in a fog, barely hearing anything the teachers said. At lunch, my teammates surrounded me in the cafeteria, a physical barrier against the stares and whispers. After school, Sam and I walked to the district office together. A crowd had already gathered outside, some with pro-coach signs, others wearing blue ribbons that the girls' team had distributed as a symbol of solidarity. I spotted my parents near the entrance. They hadn't seen me yet. My dad was talking animatedly to a man in a suit who I recognized as a school board member. My mom was checking her phone, her face pinched with worry. Then I saw Coach Ryder. He was standing a few feet away from my parents, surrounded by a group of supporters. He looked confident, smiling and shaking hands like he was at a campaign event rather than a disciplinary hearing. My steps faltered. Sam squeezed my hand. "You can do this," she whispered. As we approached the entrance, my parents finally noticed me. My mom started walking toward us, but Mrs. Chen suddenly appeared, stepping between us like a shield. "Not now, Karen," she said to my mom. "Lindsay needs to prepare her statement." My mom looked shocked at being blocked. "She's my daughter. I have every right." "You lost that right when you invited her abuser into your home," Mrs. Chen replied calmly but firmly. We slipped past them into the building. Inside, the boardroom was already filling up. Principal Warner waved us over to reserved seats in the front row. She looked stressed but determined. "There's been a development," she said quietly. 3 former students from Coach Ryder's previous schools have submitted written statements. The board has them now. I felt a surge of hope. Maybe I wouldn't have to do this alone after all. As the meeting was called to order, I glanced back and saw my parents entering the room. They sat near the back, as far from me as possible. My dad wouldn't meet my eyes, but my mom stared at me with an expression I couldn't read, somewhere between anger and desperation. The board president explained the purpose of the meeting and the format for public comments. Coach Ryder would speak first, followed by his supporters, then those with complaints, and finally, the board would deliberate. Coach Ryder approached the podium with the confident stride of someone who'd never faced consequences in his life. He cleared his throat and looked directly at me as he began to speak. "I've dedicated my life to helping young athletes reach their potential," he said. "Sometimes that means pushing them past their comfort zones. It's unfortunate that in today's climate, tough coaching is misconstrued as something inappropriate." He went on to talk about his record, his philosophy, how he'd helped countless students secure college scholarships. He portrayed himself as a victim of oversensitivity and political correctness. "As for the specific allegations," he continued, his voice hardening, "I categorically deny any inappropriate behavior. These claims come primarily from students who weren't meeting team standards and faced being cut." My hands clenched into fists. That was a lie. I'd never been in danger of being cut. I was already so bad that being benched was punishment enough. After Coach Ryder, a parade of supporters spoke. Mostly parents of boys he'd coached, a few faculty members, and even a couple of girls from our team who claimed they'd never experienced or witnessed anything inappropriate. Then it was our turn. Sam went first, describing in clear, unemotional terms exactly what she'd witnessed. Other teammates followed, each adding details that built a damning picture of Coach Ryder's behavior. Finally, it was my turn. As I walked to the podium, I felt everyone's eyes on me. My legs were shaking so badly I worried I might collapse. I placed my prepared statement on the podium, took a deep breath, and looked up. And that's when I saw them. My parents, sitting in the back row. But they weren't looking at me with anger anymore. My mom was crying silently. My dad looked shell-shocked. Between them sat Jake, his expression grim but resolute. Something had changed. I didn't know what, but something was different. I gripped the edges of the podium and began to speak. "My name is Lindsay Thompson. I've played soccer since I was 5 years old because it was expected of me, not because I loved it. I've never been good enough. Not for the team, not for Coach Ryder, and especially not for my parents." As I continued my statement, detailing every inappropriate comment, every humiliating moment, every instance where Coach Ryder had crossed the line, I kept my eyes fixed on the board members. I refused to look at my parents or Coach Ryder. This wasn't about them anymore. This was about the truth. When I finished, the room was silent. No applause, no reactions, just a heavy, waiting silence. I returned to my seat, legs still shaking. The board president thanked everyone for their comments and announced they would take a short recess before deliberating. As people began to move around, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to find Jake standing there, looking uncomfortable but determined. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. "Outside?" I hesitated, then nodded. Sam gave me a concerned look, but I assured her I'd be fine. Jake and I stepped out into the hallway, finding a quiet corner away from the crowds. "What do you want?" I asked, crossing my arms defensively. Jake ran a hand through his hair, looking more stressed than I'd ever seen him. "I need to tell you something. About Coach Ryder. And Mom and Dad." I followed Jake outside, still on edge. Whatever he had to say, I wasn't sure I wanted to hear it. We found a quiet spot near the water fountain, away from everyone else. "What about Coach Ryder?" I asked, keeping my voice low. Jake looked like he might throw up. He kept glancing around like he was afraid someone would overhear us. "Last night, Coach Ryder came over. He was talking with Mom and Dad in the living room. I was upstairs, but I could hear them getting louder." Jake paused, swallowing hard. "I went down to get water and overheard them talking about you." My stomach clenched. "What were they saying?" "Coach was telling Mom and Dad how they needed to handle you before the board meeting. Said he'd dealt with troublemakers before at his old schools." Jake's voice dropped even lower. "He said he had a system for difficult girls who threatened his career." I felt cold all over. "What system?" "He didn't say exactly, but he mentioned how parents were always the key. If he got the parents on his side, the girls eventually backed down." Jake looked at me directly now. Then he said something about how his last school's investigation went away after he had a private meeting with the girl who complained. "Did Mom and Dad say anything?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "They just kept agreeing, saying they needed to get you home so you'd see reason." Jake looked down at his shoes. "But then this morning something weird happened. Dad got a phone call that made him freak out. He kicked Coach Ryder out of the house." I blinked in surprise. "What? Why?" "I don't know exactly. Dad was yelling about being lied to. Mom was crying. They didn't know I was listening." Jake hesitated. "But I heard Dad say something like, 'There were police reports, you son of a bitch.'" My mind raced. Police reports? Had someone sent my parents actual evidence about Coach Ryder? Before I could ask more questions, the doors to the boardroom opened. People started filing back in for the deliberation. Jake grabbed my arm. "Lindsay, I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I should have had your back from the beginning." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to hug him, and part of me was still too hurt. I just nodded and headed back inside. As I took my seat next to Sam, I noticed my parents had moved closer to the front. They weren't sitting with Coach Ryder's supporters anymore. My mom's eyes were red and puffy, and my dad looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. The board president called the meeting back to order. "Before we begin our deliberations, we have received new information that the board feels must be addressed immediately." The room went quiet. Even the whispers stopped. "Coach James Ryder, it has come to our attention that you were the subject of a police investigation at your previous school in Westlake. Is this correct?" Coach Ryder's face went white. He stood up quickly. "That was a misunderstanding that was fully resolved." "Please answer the question," the board president interrupted. "Were you investigated for inappropriate conduct with female students at Westlake High School?" "Those allegations were withdrawn," Coach Ryder said, his confident tone slipping. "The parents realized their daughter was confused." "Mr. Ryder," a different board member cut in, "we have obtained copies of police reports filed by 3 separate families between 2018 and 2020. These were not included in your employment application or background check. Can you explain this omission?" The room erupted in murmurs. I turned to Sam, who looked as shocked as I felt. Someone had found actual police reports? I remembered the anonymous texts I'd received from girls at his previous schools. Had one of them come forward with evidence? Coach Ryder was stammering now, trying to explain that the reports had been procedural misunderstandings that were later clarified. He wasn't making much sense. I glanced at my parents. My dad was staring straight ahead, jaw clenched. My mom had her hand over her mouth. The board president held up a hand for silence. In light of this new information and the testimony we've heard today, this board will need to conduct a more thorough investigation. In the meantime, Coach Ryder will remain suspended from all duties. This meeting is adjourned. It wasn't the decisive victory I'd hoped for, but it was something. Coach Ryder wouldn't be coming back to school tomorrow, or anytime soon. As people started leaving, I saw Coach Ryder storming toward the exit, ignoring questions from parents. A few of his supporters followed him, looking confused and concerned. Sam's mom appeared at my side. "Ready to go, girls?" I nodded, but then spotted my parents making their way toward me. I tensed up immediately. "Can we talk to Lindsay?" My mom asked Mrs. Chen. "Please, just for a minute." Mrs. Chen looked at me. "It's up to you, honey." I hesitated, then nodded. "It's okay. I'll meet you at the car." Sam squeezed my hand before leaving with her mom. I stood facing my parents, arms crossed defensively. "What do you want?" I asked, echoing the question I'd asked Jake earlier. My mom started crying again. My dad looked like he was struggling to find words, which was a first. He'd always had plenty to say about my failures. "Lindsay," he finally said, his voice rough, "we owe you an apology." I stared at him, not sure I'd heard correctly. My dad had never apologized to me for anything in my life. "This morning we received an email," he continued. "Anonymous. It had police reports attached. 3 different girls at Westlake High filed complaints against Coach Ryder. The details." He trailed off, looking sick. "They matched exactly what you told us. So you only believe me because someone sent you proof?" I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. "You couldn't just trust your own daughter?" "We should have. my mom said, wiping her eyes. We were wrong, Lindsay. So wrong. We thought we were protecting your future, my dad added. Your chances at college, at scholarships. You thought I was lying for attention, I finished for him. You thought I was too sensitive. You thought Coach Ryder was more important than me. They didn't deny it. They couldn't. We want you to come home, my mom said quietly. We understand if you're not ready, but whenever you are, your room is waiting. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream at them, to make them feel as small and worthless as they'd made me feel. But another part was just tired. So tired of fighting. I need time, I said finally. I can't just pretend nothing happened. My dad nodded. We understand. Take all the time you need. As they turned to leave, I called after them. Who sent you those police reports? My dad shook his head. We don't know. The email came from an anonymous account. Just said, your daughter is telling the truth in the subject line. After they left, I stood alone in the emptying boardroom, trying to process everything. Someone had sent those reports to my parents and probably to the school board too. But who? I walked out to the parking lot in a daze. Sam and her mom were waiting in their car. As I approached, I noticed someone leaning against a nearby truck, Principal Warner. She was on her phone, but when she saw me, she quickly ended her call. Lindsay, she called. Got a minute? I walked over, curious. Yes? I wanted to check how you're doing, she said. That was a lot in there. I'm okay, I said automatically. Just processing everything. She nodded. I also wanted to tell you something. Those police reports that came to light, the board received them this morning from an anonymous email. I tilted my head. My parents got the same email. Principal Warner smiled slightly. I thought they might have. I also received a copy. Something in her tone made me look at her more closely. Do you know who sent them? She adjusted her glasses. Let's just say some people in education keep tabs on problematic colleagues, for the safety of students. Was she saying what I thought she was saying? Had Principal Warner been the one to find and distribute those reports? Before I could ask directly, she continued. The important thing is that the truth came out. Coach Ryder won't be working with students again, here or anywhere else. I'll make sure of that. She gave my shoulder a gentle squeeze. You did the right thing, Lindsay. It took real courage. As she walked away, I felt a weight lifting. Someone had believed me enough to dig for evidence. Someone had made sure the truth couldn't be buried this time. I got into Sam's car, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Everything okay? Sam asked. Getting there, I said, and actually meant it. The next few weeks were a weird adjustment period. I stayed at Sam's for another week before finally going home. My parents were trying, really trying, to make things right. My dad took down all the soccer trophies from the living room without me even asking. My mom stopped bringing up college scholarships or team rankings. At school, things slowly returned to normal. The investigation into Coach Ryder continued, but he was officially fired 2 weeks after the board meeting. The assistant coach took over permanently, and practices became something I actually looked forward to again. The most surprising change was in my relationship with soccer itself. Without the pressure from my parents or the fear of Coach Ryder's comments, I found myself actually enjoying practice sometimes. I was still terrible, but it didn't seem to matter as much anymore. One afternoon after a particularly good practice, I only tripped twice. Sam caught up with me as we were walking to the locker room. So, she said casually, I've been thinking about something. What's that? I asked, taking a long drink from my water bottle. You don't actually like soccer, do you? I nearly choked. After everything that had happened, that question seemed almost funny. Not really, I admitted. Never have. Sam nodded like she'd known all along. What do you like? If you could do anything after school instead of soccer, what would it be? I thought about it. No one had ever asked me that question before. I don't know. Maybe photography? I've always liked taking pictures. The school newspaper needs a photographer, Sam pointed out. Their sports photographer graduated last year. I laughed. So I'd still be at all the games, just not playing in them? Exactly. You'd be around your friends, but doing something you actually enjoy. The idea took root immediately. That night, I talked to my parents about quitting soccer. I braced myself for arguments or guilt trips, but they just listened. When I finished, my dad asked if I was sure, and when I said yes, he just nodded. What would you do instead? My mom asked. Maybe photography for the school paper, I said, still expecting resistance. My dad looked thoughtful. We could get you a decent camera, if that's what you want. It was such a simple conversation, nothing like the drama I'd expected. The next day, I talked to the newspaper advisor, who was thrilled to have someone volunteer for sports photography. My first assignment was, ironically, a soccer game. I stood on the sidelines with my new camera. My parents had ordered it the same day I mentioned photography, watching my former teammates play. Sam scored 2 goals and waved at me after each one. I got some great action shots. It felt strange at first, being on the outside looking in. But as I focused my lens on the game, capturing moments I used to be part of, I realized something important. I didn't miss playing at all. Not even a little bit. After the game, the team surrounded me, wanting to see the photos I'd taken. They were still my friends, still my people. I just didn't have to suffer through soccer to be with them anymore. As we all walked to the parking lot together, laughing and talking about the game, I caught sight of my parents waiting by their car. They waved but didn't come over, giving me space with my friends. My dad was holding my camera bag, and my mom had brought snacks for everyone. They were trying. We all were. And for the first time in years, I felt like maybe that was enough.